McCuistion, for over 28 years talking about things that matter with people who care. Production of McCuistion is made possible in part by individual viewers, supporters of the Foundation for Responsible Television, the University of Texas at Dallas, creating the future.
Welcome to the program. I'm Dennis McCuistion. This is my co-host, Jim Falk. And Jim, we're going to talk about hunger and that sort of thing. And I know it's one of the subjects that's close to your heart. So why don't you welcome that viewer in and tell them what we're going to talk about.
Well, this is such an important issue. We see signs and billboards on the tollway, but I'm glad that we have an opportunity to really discuss it in detail over the next 30 minutes or so. In the world's wealthiest nation, 37 million people struggle with daily hunger, and 11 million of them are children. The problem is particularly acute in North Texas. On this program, Dennis and I examine the causes, what is being done, and most importantly, whether there is an achievable solution. Joining us via Skype from Chicago is the Director of Communication for Feeding America, Zouani Villarreal. Feeding America is the nation's largest hunger relief organization with a network of 200 food banks across the country. Welcome, Zouani. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Here in the studio, I'm with Jennifer Collins. Jennifer is Manager of Marketing and Communications at Resource Center, a nonprofit organization that has served the LGBTQ and HIV communities in North Texas for over 37 years. Also with us is Valerie Stone Hawthorne. She's the Government Relations Director at the North Texas Food Bank, and she has been working in food security, policy, and community issues since 2013. She holds a doctorate degree in biology and cellular biology from the UT MD Anderson Cancer Center. Valerie, thank you so much for being here as well. Let's just start by, how do you go from getting a doctorate degree in biology and cellular biology, ending up where you are today?
Well, my original work was in cancer research, and specifically breast cancer research. And from breast cancer research, I transitioned into policy that surrounded a lot of patients that couldn't access care. They would have to make tough decisions about their care just because of insurance. And while working in insurance reform and policy, I kind of got into the hunger space because nutrition and cancer go hand in hand. And it turns out the same population of people that need better insurance or insurance at all are the same population of people that are hungry. So it was kind of a natural transition into there, even though it doesn't seem that way.
So how serious is the problem here in Dallas?
It's serious. It's concerning, for sure.
Well, we want to look at some of the graphics about this.
Sure.
Tell me a bit more about it.
So in Dallas County, we have about 156,000 people that are food insecure. And when you look at that compared to the national average, it's much higher. And you look at that in the state of Texas average, it's even higher. We have about a $215 million food budget shortfall, meaning that that is the amount of money that is needed every year to make up the difference in the cost of the meals to have.
And is it a seasonal problem to a degree? Do you see it worse in the holidays?
It is worse in the holidays, but it's even worse in the summer. In the summer, we have kids that are out of school, so they're not getting those school meals, and parents are having to take off work to take care of their children during the summer, and so they're losing that income.
Now, all three of you represent very different areas in the food insecurity space.
Sure.
Zouani, tell me a little bit about what your organization does.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you again for the opportunity to join you guys via Skype. So Feeding America is a national food bank network. We have a nationwide network of 200 food banks, including North Texas Food Bank, that serve every community, every state, Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico. So through that vast network, we're helping over 40 million people annually with food assistance. And every food bank is unique. Every food bank has its own service area and its own community that is food insecure. So the solution for one food bank may not fit the same solution for a different food bank. So our job at the national level is to help bring in national partnerships with food donors, help increase capacity at the food banks, and then also help bring food banks together to problem solve and share best practices. Our goal is very important, but definitely the food banks and their partner agencies on the ground are the ones that are doing the work, the daily work of providing emergency food.
Well, first of all, Zuani, thank you very much for what you do. But here's a question that I've always had. You talk about 40 million people, which is great. It's a lot of people. There are about, I think today, about 36 million people on what we used to call food stamps, the SNAP program now. Are these the same people, or are we talking about two different groups?
There is some overlap between the individuals that or the households that are getting food assistance via the food banks and households that are getting SNAP benefits. It's not a 100% overlap, but there is some overlap. We do know that it's not participation in SNAP. It's not 100% for everybody that's eligible. So those individuals or households that don't know that they may qualify for SNAP or for assistance for federal benefits, we turn to food banks and the charitable food sector for help.
So, Valerie, when we say the North Texas Food Bank, is that one organization, or are there different components of it here in Dallas?
Sure. So the North Texas Food Bank serves 13 counties here in North Texas. And we serve that through, we do have some direct programs where we're getting food directly to people, but it's mainly through our partner agencies like the Resource Center here. Our partner agencies are on the ground. They are touching the lives of the communities, and we're able to provide food to them so that they can do other services that may perhaps shorten that line.
So you're the wholesaler in a way.
We are the wholesaler.
And then you are, Jennifer, working directly with the client.
Yes, absolutely. So with Resource Center, we serve the LGBTQ and HIV communities, but we did get our start as a food pantry for the HIV community back in 1983. And as Valerie has said, we do use North Texas Food Bank as our source for the food for our food pantry.
So how do people access your services?
They do have to meet the eligibility requirements. So that can mean living in Dallas County or one of the approved counties that are eligible. They do have to be diagnosed with HIV by a case manager. And they also have more resources on our website that they do have to meet, but they also have to
Let me interject for a second, because
absolutely.
I think we do have a graphic on that, and I think that'll be helpful for people to see if
sure.
you'll take a look there.
So one of the other things that to meet their eligibility is to live 30% above the poverty level, which in Dallas would be $36,000 a year, but most of our clients are well below that level. As you can see from this graph, we have about 1,300 food pantry clients and about 1,000 hot meal clients approximately. And through our food pantry program, we're able to serve this community that has special dietary needs.
Yeah, I'm a little confused. It says 23,637 shops. Does that mean that visits to the food pantry?
Yes, that is individual visits to the food pantry over the span of that year.
So they come to your food pantry?
They do.
Now, do you also deliver meals to patients?
We don't deliver, but we do have the capability of doing that if there was someone that had a specific need. But it is mostly to come into the food pantry and do a shop. And the way our food pantry is set up is like a grocery store. So the client is empowered to make those choices and pick out the foods that they need. One of the special things about our food pantry is that we carry high protein items and nutrient dense items to meet that HIV client's special dietary needs.
And one of the things that Dennis and I were talking about as we prepared for the day's program was you don't just talk about hunger, you talk about food insecurity. And one of the striking things that we talked about at the opening of the program was how many children are hungry and are insecure. Talk about that, the impact, and what does it, the long-term impact on a child who goes to school hungry.
Absolutely, and you're absolutely right to talk about the difference between hunger and food insecurity. Often when we think of hunger, we're thinking of hunger that we see in maybe sub-Saharan Africa. But the hunger that we see here in the United States is that food insecurity. Where is my next meal coming from? And for a child to have to worry about that when they come home from school, they don't know if there's going to be dinner on the table. They don't know if there's going to be food over the weekend. It's a heartbreaking thing for a child to go through, and it causes many long-term effects. We know it causes an effect in education. We speak to a lot of teachers. They know exactly who the kids in their classroom are that are food insecure. The signs are evident. They're tired. They maybe are hiding food in their pockets. That's a common thing that is seen in the lunch line. So
what causes that?
What causes what? Food insecurity? Well, if we had 4 more hours, I could probably go into all the details for you. But really, food insecurity is a problem of access. We live in a country where we have more food than we know what to do with, and we have a giant hunger problem. And when you put those two problems together, you have a solution, which are food banks and our food pantries that are able to get food out into the network. We rescue food and then get it to where it needs to go. Now, as far as what is causing all this hunger and food insecurity, we got to look at the root causes. You can fix hunger by giving people food, but you'll never solve hunger by giving people food. You have to look at other issues that are going on. Is it unemployment? Is it low-wage employment? Housing costs? All of these other aspects that play into why somebody is having trouble getting food.
As well as food deserts.
As well as food deserts.
With the urbanization of America, you're finding people who used to be able to go to the grocery store. That grocery store has closed.
Right.
And they're getting older, as we are, and they may not
Yourself, Jim.
may not be able to drive to the grocery store.
Sure. Let me tell you about my morning. I spent this morning in 75216 down here in Dallas, and I was doing kind of an assessment of about a 5 square mile area. And I found 3 places that carried produce in that 5 square mile. One was a sad little basket that had some pretty sad little bananas. And the other 2 were convenience stores that had taken on the initiative to carry produce for the community. Everything else, there was no healthy, nutritious food in sight. It was snacks, it was beer and wine and soda.
And this is one of the problems in America, because people don't realize how many people are hungry or food insecure, because we have this image of someone, I want to be somewhat politically correct, in a developing country that looks hungry, and yet in the United States you may see people and they look absolutely fine, but they're probably being nourished on McDonald's and French fries.
Well,
Absolutely.
it's not just here. I happen to have spent some time in France this summer, and so I'm riding around with a real estate agent in southern France, and we're looking at houses that are a little older than the ones we have in Dallas. The first one was built in 1735, and the other one was built in 1640, so those are a little older, even older than Jim and I are, actually. And as I was riding around, she said to me, why are there so many poor people in America? And I didn't have a really good answer for that. So Zuani, let me just ask you, I'm assuming, like as we've talked about here, that not everybody who's food insecure is, quote, poor, but I am also certain that economic issues are a big part of it. Why is it in this country that we end up having this kind of a discussion?
Yeah, it's really interesting, and there's so many factors that go into food insecurity here in the United States. So, for example, Feeding America, we have an annual study called Map the Meal Gap, where we take USDA food insecurity information, but also added additional layers to get food insecurity rates by county down to the county level. USDA provides state and national level data. We want to drill down to the local level. So with Map the Meal Gap, we look not only at USDA food insecurity rates, we look at poverty rates, we look at employment at the county level, we look at housing information, and then we also look at food costs, food pricing and food costs per county. So take all those different factors, and in one county, the issue could be high housing costs that's causing a lot of food insecurity in that community. In another county, it could be high food costs, or it could be high unemployment. So there's a variety of different factors, and at the national level, we're providing the tools for the food banks to have that information at the local level, to use that to best come up with strategies to impact hunger in their community.
Okay, that's a good way of looking at it. And we have, according to most people, a really, really good economy, or if I was quoting our president, really, really terrific, fantastic economy right now.
Stock market's never been higher.
Stock market's never been higher, all that. But seriously, are you finding that there's less of a need now than there was, let's say, 5 or 10 years ago, or does that need continue to grow?
Well, I can speak at the national level. The USDA food insecurity numbers at this most recent report that was issued in September was the first time that the food insecurity rate dropped below or back to pre-recession levels. So it took us about a decade to fully recover from the recession, even though the recession ended years ago. But the food insecurity rate lagged, and it was still higher than pre-recession levels only up until this last year. So there is something to that. When we talk to families, when we talk to individuals that are coming to food banks for help, they're working, they are trying to make ends meet, but everything else just eats into that household budget. And really, food is the most flexible that a family can cut back on. They have to pay rent, they have to keep a roof over their head, they have to keep the lights on. If they need transportation to get to and from work, they need that. And so food is the most flexible part of the household budget.
What do you see in Dallas?
What do you see in Dallas? In Dallas, you see a lot of tough choices being made, exactly as what she said. And
Is there an increase in need in 2019 versus 2 or 3 years ago?
So if you look at the data that Feeding America provides for us, and you look at other national data, you will see that there is a decreased need for food assistance. However, I haven't met one food pantry operator who has said they've seen a shorter line. So you have to take that quantitative and the qualitative together. And from what we are seeing, there's still a high need, and most of them have not seen it drop.
Dennis, you mentioned what you saw in France, and where 1 out of 6 Americans are food insecure. In Western Europe, 1 out of 20 are. So I wonder, Zwani, if you might be able to tell us why that is. Is there a better safety net in Europe?
Oh, I can't speak to that. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But I do know that for food insecure households here in the United States, we know that about a quarter of the households that are food insecure their incomes are above the federal benefits income eligibility level. So they're making more money than they would need to qualify for SNAP for food stamps. So they can only turn to food banks in the charitable food sector for assistance.
All right, let me help you with that answer. The answer is that in Europe, in France as an example, their taxes are about 10%, not 10% more, but 10 basis points more than ours in many cases, 6 to 10 basis points. So they are able to provide a more uniform income and safety net than America is. America makes up for it largely, however, by giving. And we have about $427 billion a year, as you know, in annual giving philanthropically here. So that's the trade-off between the way the Europeans do it. They don't give a whole lot.
And also
they don't have any money left to give.
Well, they also don't have the same costs that we have for health care.
That's exactly right, too. Yeah.
Well, now, just a few days ago...
And by the way, France is the #1 in health care in the world.
I'll remember that.
Okay, good.
So just a few days ago, President Trump or the Trump administration announced some major changes to the SNAP program that are scheduled to take place in April. Which one of you would like to talk about that?
Sure, I can talk about that. Well, the change that occurred says that able-bodied adults without dependents, acronym is ABODs, will have to satisfy work requirements, which they have to already. However, it takes away states' rights to waive some of these work requirements during hard economic times. Currently, this won't affect Texas. Texas, we already have harsh work requirements, as well as we don't have any counties that would fall into this change. However, this change is just one in a series of changes that are happening to SNAP. The next one that's coming, a change to categorical eligibility for SNAP, which is a very long, complicated policy, it is going to have some pretty devastating impacts to Texas.
Jennifer, how did you get into what you're doing? I think you had a sort of a personal experience there. And tell us how Resource Center has, let's just say, a unique constituency and a unique way of handling it.
Well, Resource Center does serve the LGBTQ community, and so I was telling you about a personal experience. My own child is in that community, and we started going to our Youth First program, which they participated in, and I just saw the wonderful work that they did, and I joined the organization about 3.5 years ago. But I do know a lot of people that have passed away from HIV. That is the main structure of our organization, and it's something that continues to be. And so, so that is also a personal experience as well. And Just wanted to point out that when you have HIV, it's so essential to have a healthy, nutritious diet, and that is where our food pantry comes in, and that is why it's so helpful to have North Texas Food Bank as a partner. One of the symptoms of HIV is that it raises a metabolic rate, and so you lose weight, and so there's that chance of becoming malnourished, and so it's really important for the hunger aspect of this topic to have access to healthy foods. And so really just all together, the personal experience and just seeing the community rally together has been something that I definitely support.
Well, we appreciate you doing that. And a matter of fact, from the North Texas Food Bank's perspective, would you tell Tricia Cunningham for me that we'd like you just to prepare good, nutritious foods for the rest of us too. So, because the rest of us are not eating right, I can assure you of that.
The Resource Center has a very specific constituency. Are there other organizations like Resource Center that you work with?
Yes, we want to make sure that our partner agencies are serving the community how they best know how to serve them. We can provide that food to them, and then they can do the business of serving those that need help. They don't have to worry about the food costs to stock their pantry. We will help them with that, so that they can get to their true mission.
Now, I know the Resource Center is above board. How do you measure the results with other organizations?
There are a few ways to measure results. Are you feeding your community? Are needs being met? Are you satisfied with what is happening? Does your community have a better sense of health and wellness that's going on? And these are questions that should be asked on a regular basis of anybody that works with Feeding America or our food bank.
But are you like a grant organization in a sense? Resource Center applies and you review what they do and make an assessment?
We do look at our partner agencies and make sure that there's not a better way that we could be serving them. We will be opening some grants soon to the community to help with expanding any models that perhaps need expanding.
So how can our viewers support both of your organizations? What do you need?
I need 4 things. So when you want to support North Texas Food Bank or just hungry people in general, you can give your time, come volunteer. You can give food. We always need food. Donate that food. You can give resources. We can do so much with $1. We can provide 3 meals with that. Or you can give your voice. So talk to those decision makers, talk to those policy makers, and let them know that hunger is important to you.
When you say give food, aren't there a lot of restrictions about that? Hasn't that been an issue? For instance, restaurants or grocery stores, how they could deliver?
Grocery stores, not so much. For restaurants, there is an issue. So you have a food health safety concern. Food has to be kept at the proper temperature. You don't want to make a community ill. So we currently do not accept already prepared foods, but we do accept, most of our partnerships are with our grocery retailers to do food rescue.
And what about at the Resource Center?
Definitely donation of time and funds. We have about 1,200 volunteers that serve our center over the year. We only have a paid staff of about 70 people, so we really couldn't do what we do without our volunteers. And these are individual volunteers, corporate volunteers, and then also donation of funds. Our dollar goes a lot further with North Texas Food Bank when we're donated funds to be able to implement that.
I assume you're a 501c3?
We are.
Yeah. And Zuwani, are you a 501c3 at Feeding America, and how can we help you?
Yes, we are. And I would echo what the North Texas Food Bank needs, and it's just at the national level. But we always encourage folks to volunteer, to find their local food bank and volunteer and give back if they have time. If they want to, if they have just a few minutes or a few seconds, they can help raise awareness by sharing and engaging on social media. They can donate money through our website, and then they can find their local food bank through our website as well to donate that way. And then the last thing is also to donate your voice, to advocate and to speak up for the hungry neighbors, that 37 million people that are hungry here in the United States. Talk to elected officials, tell them that you support strong nutrition policy, increased access to federal nutrition programs. And to go back to the conversation about SNAP, I mean, I do want to reiterate, or I do want to say that, Feeding America is a network of 200 food banks. We're 60,000 partner agencies like the Resource Center. But through that network, for every 1 meal that we provide, the SNAP program provides 9 meals. So any cuts to SNAP is going to be devastating and detrimental to the charitable food sector. We know that we're going to see an increased demand at the local level if there are cuts to SNAP. And it's something that we can't make up for that. We can't make up for those 9 meals that SNAP is providing.
Well, every organization, every cause seems to lobby. Zwani, is that one of the purposes of your organization? Do you advocate for your needs in Washington?
We do. We advocate at the federal level. We have a great team, and our government relations team is out of DC, and that's their role. Their role is to advocate at the federal level on behalf of all the food banks. Now, those 200 food banks, they're in 50 states. They're in Puerto Rico and DC, so they have their own state and local governments that they have to manage, and so we provide support in that way too.
You know, there's a lot of questions about whether or not there'll be a recession. We've been saying that for the last few years. How do you prepare for a situation like that? Because when the demand can increase so quickly.
Well, as of right now, supply will never meet demand. So we're not even there yet. But we look more at the immediate issues, such as the fact there's going to be a government shutdown in 11 days, possibly. The last time the government shut down, we really realized how many members of our community are one paycheck away from hunger. So we have to look at those immediate things that we need to prepare for, and we prepare for by making sure that our inventory is in stock, making sure our partner agencies aren't going to see an uptick, and how we can best support them.
Well, Zwani, I want to thank you so much for being with us from Chicago. Val, Dr. Hawthorne, thank you so much. And I want to encourage all of our viewers to visit the North Texas Food Bank and the Resource Center as well. As we've heard from our guests, the issues surrounding food insecurity and hunger are complex. But when lives and futures are at stake, we must do all that we can to understand the problem and seriously question why, in such a rich country, people of all ages still go to bed hungry. Check McCuistionTV.com for other programs on related topics. And as always, join Dennis and me next time as we talk about things that matter with people who care.
For more information, call 214-750-5157 or email Nikki N at NikkiMcCuistion.com. Visit our website at www.McCuistionTV.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at www.twitter.com/McCuistionTV or download McCuistion TV video podcast on iTunes.